Now, $17,000 is not a tragedy. Plenty of retired households can absorb that comfortably. The problem is that most people have never actually added it up. They know the mortgage is gone, and their brain quietly files the house under handled. Meanwhile, that number keeps growing every single year, often faster than the rest of the retirement budget. Here's a simple exercise you can do this week. Pull out last year's bank and credit card statements. Add every dollar that touched your house: taxes, insurance, utilities, repairs, yard work, HOA fees if you have them. Divide by 12. That is your true monthly cost of staying. Most people are surprised. Some are relieved. Either way, you cannot make a good decision with a number you have never calculated. Once you know what staying costs, the next question is what moving would actually free up. This is where it gets interesting, and where a lot of people stop the conversation too early because the idea feels overwhelming. Say Frank and Carol's house is worth $410,000. If they sold it, after a typical 6% agent commission and closing costs, they would walk away with roughly $380,000. A smaller single-level home or condo nearby runs about $265,000. That leaves around $115,000 in freed-up equity. For a married couple who has lived in a home for decades, capital gains taxes on that sale are often smaller than people fear, thanks to a home sale exclusion that shields a significant amount of profit for a primary residence. The exact rules depend on your situation, so this is worth confirming with a tax professional rather than assuming. But for many long-term homeowners, the tax bill on selling is not the wall it appears to be. That freed-up equity is not just sitting there looking pretty. Invested conservatively, $115,000 could reasonably generate somewhere in the range of $4,000 to $5,000 a year in additional retirement income. Add that to the difference in carrying costs between the big house and the smaller one, roughly $8,000 annually, and staying in the current home is quietly costing Frank and Carol somewhere around $13,000 a year. Once you count both the higher expenses and the income their trapped equity is not generating. $13,000 a year does not sound dramatic on its own. Stretched across 15 or 20 years of retirement, it becomes real money. The kind that funds travel, grandchildren's education, or simply a wider margin of safety. But here's the twist, and this is the part where a lot of retirement videos stop too soon. None of that math means Frank and Carol should sell. It means they should know the price of staying and decide if it is worth paying. Let's pause and complicate this properly, because the honest answer is rarely a straight line. Selling a long-time home is not only a financial transaction, it is walking away from a support system that took decades to build. The neighbor who checks in without being asked, the doctor's office 15 minutes away, the church or community group where everyone already knows your name, the sidewalk you know well enough to walk safely in the dark. One commenter on a similar video put it plainly. After 37 years, it is not just a house. It is friends, doctors, and a church family. That is not sentimentality getting in the way of good math. That is a real, quantifiable form of security, even if it does not show up on a spreadsheet. There is also a version of staying that is not stubborn at all. It is deliberate. Some retirees own their home outright, keep carrying costs genuinely low relative to their income, and treat the deep community roots as a form of wealth that a bank account cannot replace. That is not avoiding the math. That is doing the math and choosing to stay anyway with full information. There is nothing irresponsible about that choice. The only irresponsible version is never running the numbers at all. And moving is not automatically the smart move either. In some housing markets, selling costs and buying costs eat up so much of the equity that relocating barely helps. If you love where you live, if the carrying costs are genuinely manageable, And if your health and mobility support staying, running the numbers may simply confirm that your instinct was right all along. The goal here is not to talk you out of your home. It is to make sure your home is a choice, not a habit. There is one more layer that changes everything, and it rarely shows up in the first conversation about staying or going. Deferred maintenance. A house does not announce when it is quietly getting more expensive to own. A roof does not send a warning email 5 years before it needs replacing. An aging furnace does not politely mention that next winter might be its last. These costs accumulate silently and then arrive all at once, often at the worst possible time. A retiree who calculates carrying costs once at 68 and never checks again may find that by 75, the same house needs a new roof, a new water heater, and updated wiring, all within 18 months of each other. This is also where the conversation about aging in place gets honest. Homes built for raising a family were not built for a 78-year-old climbing stairs every day. Grab bars, a walk-in shower, a bedroom on the main floor. These are not luxuries. They are the difference between staying safely and staying stubbornly. And here is something worth saying plainly, because it came up directly in real comments from adult children of retirees. Nobody wants to arrive for a visit and discover a to-do list waiting for them. Staying in a home is a decision that affects the whole family's time and energy, not just the homeowner's bank account. So before you decide anything, walk through your home like an inspector would. Ask honestly what will likely need attention in the next 5 years. Price it out, even roughly. That number belongs in your calculation just as much as this year's property tax bill. Here's a simple framework you can use, and you can remember it as the HOME test. H is for health. Can you safely manage the stairs, the yard, and the upkeep today, and realistically 5 years from now? O is for overhead. What does the home actually cost you every year, all in, not just the mortgage that is already gone? M is for money left on the table. What could the equity trapped in your home be doing for you if it were working instead of simply sitting there? E is for emotional anchor. What does this home genuinely provide that a smaller place could not? Community, memories, proximity to people you love. Be honest about the value of that. But also be honest that a feeling is not automatically worth an unlimited price. Run through those 4 questions once a year, not once at retirement and never again. Circumstances change. Health changes. Neighborhoods change. Interest rates and home values change. A decision that was right at 65 is not guaranteed to still be right at 75. Back to Frank and Carol. After running their numbers, they didn't sell. But they did something almost as valuable. They finally understood the actual price tag on staying. They set aside a real maintenance fund instead of hoping nothing broke. They talked to a contractor about aging-in-place modifications before they became urgent. And they agreed to revisit the decision every year, together, instead of assuming the answer would stay the same forever. That is the real lesson here. The house was never the problem. The silence around its true cost was. Whether you stay for 1 more year or 20, the goal is the same. Make sure it is a decision you are making, not one that is simply happening to you by default. A paid-off house can be one of the greatest gifts of a long working life. It can also be one of the most expensive habits nobody questions. The difference between those 2 outcomes is not the house. It's whether you ever sat down and looked honestly at the numbers. So here's a question worth sitting with. If you added up everything your home cost you this year, would the number surprise you? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this kind of honest, practical look at retirement resonated with you, subscribe to Quiet Wealth After 50 for more conversations about money, independence, and peace of mind after 50.